Welcome to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some news stories, shall we? The first story is called, "Okay, Come In." The house I grew up in was built on the side of a hill. Great views, but the geography posed some challenges for the city utilities, sewage in particular. Their solution was to put all the houses on the hill in what was called a shared line. Essentially, one big pipe ran through all of our backyards, just below the houses' basements. Effluent would flow out from the houses, into the shared pipe, and then down the hill to the city sewer line by the bottom-most house. When we moved in, we were at the highest point that it was possible to build on and still be part of that shared sewer line. But a few years later, someone bought a lot just over the crest of the hill and linked up with ours, without being part of the planned community that had a homeowner association that took care of the sewer line. And in fact, they did so without their approval. And so for the next 2 decades, my family would be the subject of near-constant harassment over the state of the sewer. Their end of the line was lower than ours by just enough that it would stop flowing and clog, often backing up into their basement bathroom and shower. They'd accuse us of diverting our effluent to their line. Now the reason nobody built a house on that part of the hill during the original development was that the soil was unstable. Something hydrology related. Sure enough, over the years, that house would occasionally separate from the hill and slide down a couple of inches. But our neighbors had connections in the code enforcement agency, so the place never got condemned as it should be. They just had to shore it up and reconnect all the utilities. The thing is, the further down the house moved, the steeper the negative incline was from their sewer connection to our junction box, making the clogs and backups even worse. At one point, it got so bad that their sewer barely flowed. Some days, it got completely clogged. Somehow, this was also our fault. They spent the next year calling us every time they tried to flush a toilet and stuff came out in their downstairs shower. They called a plumber, who said they had to redo their part of the shared line. And to do it, they'd have to bust through our 2-story masonry wall so they could get a backhoe onto our property and dig out the line. Of course, we had issues with this. We said no, you will not come onto our property and tear it up with a big piece of construction equipment. Hire human laborers or something. But instead, they hired lawyers who started slinging paper around. According to them, we were in violation of state law that specifically gave an implied easement granting a homeowner access through another's property to maintain their own. So we hired lawyers of our own, who said that we basically had a choice. We could win the case but pay a ton of money or just let it happen. Either way, we'd be screwed. But they pointed out one important fact, that 20-year-old masonry wall wasn't in the greatest of shape anyway. A few months later, we presented them with a bill for $75,000 for the rebuilding of the wall, installation of a new set of stairs, replacement of the entire wrought iron fence that had separated the two properties, resodding, replacement of ornamental plants and shrubs, and some minor repairs to our sewer, which they had balked up while relaying their pipes. I'm not a general contractor, but my guess is that they could have hired pick and shovel labor to dig out that pipe and replace it with a new one for a fraction of that price. But no. They had to have a giant Caterpillar tread machine do it. They balked. But then we handed them a copy of the letter that their lawyers had sent us, citing the next paragraph which stated that the person using the easement was 100% responsible for any damage that might be caused. They still balked, but my parents put a lien on their property that stayed there to the day they tried to sell, at which point they had to pay up or the purchaser's creditors wouldn't underwrite a mortgage. I think they had to pay interest too, but I'm not 100% sure about that. The next story is called, "Talk to the Hand." I was 17, in high school and working at one of the 3 big pharmacies in the United States. When summer came, my store manager asked me if I would like to work the main register full-time and I said sure. The first week of my break is supposed to start at noon but my backup keeps showing up late. Sometimes up to an hour late. She just will not respond to my pages and I'm on the main register, so it's not like I can go track her down. I am the only guy working there, all the other employees are middle-aged moms and they didn't seem too happy to have a kid working with them. I didn't really care about when I took my break, so it was all good, as long as I get to have some lunch I'm cool with it. The second week it's about 1 and I'm in the break room on break when my store manager comes in and informs me that she has had numerous complaints about me and that I am screwing up everyone's break schedule because I'm not taking my breaks on time. I try to tell her about my backup not responding but she actually puts her hand in my face in the classic talk to the hand form and says, "You need to be back from your break at 12:30 sharp, no excuses." So, the next day I page for backup at 3 times before my break should start. Then I call the second register, the person I am supposed to call if I have a long line who has a drawer in the second register. She is surprised to see no customers, but I'm already pulling my drawer to lock in the office and tell her I have to shut down main, so she needs to stay up here and ring. About 10 minutes later, a frantic store manager comes running into the break room. Why is the main register shut down? There is a huge line of people. Why did you close the main register? Just yesterday you told me I had to leave for my break at 12, no excuses. I did not say that. Did you say I have to be back at 12:30 sharp? Yes. That's what I said. And is my break a half hour long? She had nothing to respond to this and only asked, is there any chance you could open your register while I look into your backup and finish your break when I get it sorted? Sure, no problem. And for the rest of the summer my backup showed up at 5 minutes to noon without my having to call her. The third story is called, Stick to the Policy. I had to make a business trip to another city. There aren't really any decent train connections without going via outer London, and you're talking about 4 or 5 hours of train travel each way. So instead I decided to drive, and to avoid being away from the family, I got up early and left home at 5. So I arrive Brighton and need to wait on some colleagues. I know my employer will meet my costs for breakfast up to about £8, so I went to a restaurant and had a breakfast for under £3. I waited for the others and 30 minutes later they arrived. So I offered to buy a coffee and one for myself so we can talk and plan before meeting our supplier at their offices. Fast forward and the day goes fine. I travel home on the same day and come to submit my expenses for the breakfast and for 2 coffees, which was still under the allowance. The finance team rejected my expenses for the coffee as, you've already claimed for breakfast. I pointed out it was the same cafe within 30 minutes and that if I'd bought the coffee at the same time as the sandwich, they'd approve it. And there is more. As I traveled on the day of the meeting from home, I was not entitled to claim for lunch. I was told it was tough luck and I should stick to the expenses policy in the future. Okay. I've recently returned from visiting the same supplier as before. However, this time I left work at lunchtime the day before, to avoid traveling on my own time and ensure I arrived at the hotel during my normal working day. I then had an evening meal with drinks, a nice room in a city centre hotel, a full buffet breakfast and my parking and travel costs all covered. Since I'd travelled the day before, I'm entitled to claim lunch as I could not have taken a packed lunch from home, and lastly, since I arrived home after 8, I claimed not only for another evening meal on the way home but a half day of time off for the time spent travelling home. At least I stuck to the expenses policy this time. The last story is called, Why Can't They Hear Him? I'm a freelance live audio and video operator, hired to work with a pharmaceutical company that has their yearly meeting with an apparently unapproachable presenter. I'm a pretty approachable person. I dress nicely and interact with clientele very courteously and professionally. However, I guess they have had negative experiences with some past guys, and I'll admit, many of the guys in my industry can be pretty gruff and rough around the edges and not the best client-facing, so I'm not going to hold it against them. Their meeting coordinator made it very clear that I should not interact with the client unless she addresses me directly. Great, someone that doesn't want to treat me like a human being. That's fine, I can take orders and comply, the customer is always right. It's a super simple job in a very small room with 2 handheld microphones and 1 microphone routed over a phone patch so people can listen into the meeting from a remote destination. They do not even need any sound reinforcement in the room because it's such a small room. What's important is that the people on the phone can hear her and other presenters speak. Again, this is a super easy job. I test my phone patch and it's working correctly and clearly. All I have to do is microphone up the presenter, but I'm not permitted to approach her. So I ask the event coordinator if I can approach her to put the microphone up. She says that she'll do it, which was bad because as an audio guy, you want to make sure that everything runs correctly. But sure, it's a good microphone, and even if it's positioned poorly, I can get enough gain to send down the phone patch, especially since there's no sound reinforcement in the room with no chance of feedback. I try my best to convince her that I should be the one to put it up, but she's not hearing any of it, grabs the microphone and goes to the presenter. I watch it all go down, the presenter is refusing the microphone. The event coordinator comes back with the microphone in her hand and says the presenter does not want to wear a microphone and that the microphones need to be turned off immediately. My guess is that they are afraid of being recorded because of confidential information. So I explain to the event coordinator that the people on the phone patch will not be able to hear her without a microphone. She asks, why? Because of physics? Of course I don't say this and explain that without it there's no way to send her voice down the phone patch. But she doesn't want to wear it. I explain that I can have it near her and gain it up as much as possible. She cuts me off and says, the microphones cannot be turned on. Okay, but no one will be able to hear her on the phone patch. That's not my problem. Then the meeting starts. The microphones are off, I'm complying. The presenter speaks for about an hour, finishes up, steps down, and about 5 minutes later, she comes storming up to me demanding why people on the phone patch couldn't hear her. I explain very clearly what happened and she turns to the event coordinator and unloads on her. Turns out the presenter wasn't so bad. In fact, she was very approachable and says to me that if she would have known that she just needed to wear a microphone, she would have gladly worn one. She thanked me and the rest of the presenters wore microphones for the rest of the day without any issues. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.